It's universally enshrined as the ultimate Christmas viewing experience, yet the film's reputation as a timeless classic belies its fraught and often subversively dark history. Beneath its familiar, warm surface lies a deep and rich vein of real-life tragedy, trauma, and sacrifice. This is not a story of easy sentiment. This is a story of how the raw, unscripted agony of a war veteran's soul was captured in the purest of ways. This film is not surface level. It's not a superficial regurgitation of a former classic, and it's not a straight-to-TV adaptation of a fantasy love story. It's powerful, and it's genuine. What's it called? Well, It's a Wonderful Life. When I watch this film, I don't just see a classic Christmas tale. I see the deepest kind of truth. Yes, this is a film about the deepest depths of despair, but that darkness is actually the foundation for the film's light. It's impossible to talk about It's a Wonderful Life without putting it in its historical context. The film was released in 1946, a post-Second World War America that had just sacrificed a generation of young men, both in the lives of the fallen and, given our modern understanding of mental health and well-being, in the minds of those lads that came home. After all, this was a time when you just didn't talk about bad things, and so the hell that those lads had been through for the last 3 or 4 years of their lives wasn't something that they just left back here in Europe or in the Far East. No, of course, they took all that home with them. Both the film's director, the legendary Frank Capra, and the equally iconic lead actor Jimmy Stewart, both saw the horrors of war up close and personal. And it almost feels like when you watch It's a Wonderful Life, it's a form of therapy for both Capra and Stewart, and it's like they're offering a message of enduring hope, not only for themselves, but also for their fellow servicemen, and almost certainly their families as well. And in that regard, the film is tragically timeless. It speaks directly to the crisis of self-worth and mental health, particularly in men, where tragically the conversation around men and mental health, particularly in those of us under 50, remains acutely relevant. The dark themes that run through this picture for us in the modern era provide endless depth and meaning, but they were probably a bit too real for that post-war audience, and so ultimately the film failed financially, probably because of its honesty. Obviously I wasn't there, but I assume that a war-weary public that was dealing with a mental health pandemic probably didn't want to see that level of reality projected on screen, and so they didn't turn out for it, instead favouring easy escapism, and who can really blame them for that? However, it's precisely that unflinching commitment to showing George Bailey's raw, agonising pain, the anxiety of the provider, the pressure on the husband, and the trauma of the serviceman, that makes its message of hope feel profoundly earned. And it argues that every man, even when he feels utterly worthless, has left and will leave an invisible, essential mark on the world around him. And it's that brutally honest sentiment that separates Capra and many of his contemporaries from the superficial slop that is film in the modern era. Visually, the film's language, in my opinion, is one of technical genius. Capra and his crew were able to visually define morality through light. Capra's command of contrast is, I think, self-evident. And what I love about the film's look and feel is the stark difference between Bedford Falls and Pottersville. Bedford Falls, which we see in soft focus, its warm light giving us a sense of sentimental glow, is the visual representation of the idyllic community. And then the filmmaking shift as we enter Pottersville, where we are plunged into a stark darkness. Potterville, which George sees in his mind's eye, is cold, sharp, and deep in shadow. Visually, we see a world without George's simple, honest decency, a world that is morally wrong, full of vice and selfishness, a world devoid of community and generosity. Capra and his crew expertly employed the tools and tricks of Hollywood's golden age to create an enduring, powerful contrast between community and isolation in a timeless fashion. The core narrative is a profound argument for compassion, and this can be found in the decency of the Bailey brothers building and loan company, which is George's family business. Their community-focused approach pitted against the ruthless, destructive greed of Mr. Potter and George's vision of Pottersville. Capra's argument of compassion over corporate greed was a shocking concept at the time, particularly for the US government. The power of Capra's narrative was noticed at the highest level. In 1947, the FBI actually opened a file on It's a Wonderful Life, the agency investigating Capra and the film, believing it to be a subversive communist attempt to undermine the banker and upper classes of American society. Capra was even investigated as a communist himself, but was ultimately found to be a conservative who believed in small-town capitalism over corporatism. The film was deemed subversive, but the House Un-American Activities Committee chose not to pursue action against it, and it was through that inactivity that the film was ultimately saved. And then would go on to be the Christmas hit that we all know and love, as it was shown on TV every year, pretty much for the subsequent years since. Of course, the emotional heart of It's a Wonderful Life truly belongs to the film's lead, James Stewart. He didn't just play George Bailey, in my opinion. He gave him his soul. Stewart, a decorated World War II combat veteran, returned to the States deeply affected by his experiences and struggled with what we now recognise as PTSD. Later, biographers would go on to confirm that the role of George Bailey was a therapeutic process for Jimmy Stewart, who was already kind of a big deal at the time, but despite It's a Wonderful Life being a flop, would go on to become one of Hollywood's most recognisable faces of all time. You can see Stewart's experiences as a combat pilot and his struggles with mental health in the rawness and power of his performance as George. The clearest representation of this, for me, comes from one of the film's most powerful and remembered scenes. The scene when George is in the bar having a breakdown. He's weeping and praying.
If you're up there and you can hear me, show me the way.
That was unscripted, and George was supposed to cry in this scene, but clearly Jimmy took the lid off and Capra was clever enough to leave the camera rolling. It's in this scene that Stewart really allows himself to be overwhelmed by his own anguish and trauma. And yeah, there's a glint at the beginning where you get that sense of classic Hollywood melodrama where Jimmy's clearly got his actor's cap on. But then there's this split second where you can see that genuine emotion and trauma just take over, and it becomes a really genuine scene.
I'm at the end of my rope, right? Show me the way. Oh, God.
It becomes really hard to not feel a connection, an empathy, or a sympathy for Jimmy at that moment. I mean, it doesn't feel like acting, which is always a clear indication of an amazing performance. When you become less aware that you're watching someone pretend to be somebody else, that's truly the mark of a good actor. I suppose it could be argued that it's possibly the first time Hollywood captured this kind of profound vulnerability. It's certainly one of the most honest performances in the entire Golden Age period, at least, in my opinion. To me, this film is a testament to the power of a story that's honest about pain and unwavering about hope. It reminds us that true wealth really is invisible, and that every life, no matter how small you might feel at any given stage of it, has the power to create infinite ripples of goodness. We are, in our everyday lives, often focused on the bad stuff, aren't we? The people that may have wronged us, or the past trauma that we can't shake, the heartaches and disappointments that plague our waking minds. And we often forget that life truly is full of wonder. That feeling you got when you were a kid and somebody pushed you on a swing, the first time you fell in love or made somebody laugh. These are the things that truly make life worth living, and sadly, they're always the moments that are most fleeting. And so this Christmas, I genuinely and wholeheartedly encourage you to watch this film. Again, if like me, you've seen it 1,000 times, or if you've never seen it for the first time, because the message behind this film really is powerful, and hopefully it will encourage you to hold those you love a little closer, to look after somebody who needs a helping hand, or at the very least, give hope a chance for yourself as we look forward into 2026. So that was my take on perhaps the greatest Christmas film of all time. But what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.